Hello guys and gals, welcome back to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we're doing a creepypasta called The Sega. Now before I start this creepypasta, I'm going to be doing it word for word. I like to switch it up here and there, and because this is genuinely short. So, let's begin. It happened a month ago. I started writing this because, well, everyone else writes their scary stories, don't they? I was driving to get some lunch at whatever junky fast food place I usually go to. I was starving and my stomach started to hurt really bad. So I took a shortcut to what I think was McDonald's. The shortcut led through the ghetto neighborhood and out into the bad part of town. Like I said, I was extremely hungry, so I drove pretty fast. While I was driving, I passed a police car and I knew I was going to get immediately pulled over, so to avoid that, I cautiously turned into an old and dumpy road part of the ghetto neighborhood. I looked back and saw the police car drive right past the hard-to-see road. I felt relief and continued to drive to the exit, when I spotted a box of stuff drop out of a van. I pulled over to the driveway, which probably wasn't a good idea, picked up the box and looked inside, finding a Sega Genesis. I grinned of nostalgia. I used to have one as a kid. I was kind of worried about taking it up to the door, and I really didn't feel like getting shot. So I set the box with the Sega into the van. As I was walking away, I couldn't get over how nostalgic it was to see one of those. So out of curiosity, I walked over, took the box, put it in the passenger seat of my car. I mean, no one would know I took it, right? I got into the car and didn't realize I was sweating and feeling very queasy, so I knew I was extremely hungry. After I got home, stuffed with cheeseburgers in me, I took the Sega out of the car and brought it inside for further investigation. I looked inside the box. The Sega was in acceptable condition, pretty dusty and some stains of cola or some sort. I proceeded to look into more of the box. I found a controller, the cords, and one game. I was way more interested in this game because I was happy to see that there was still a game. I looked at the gritty, sticky, and dusty cartridge. I blew the dust off. It was totally a bootleg. It was called Balloon Man. I don't think there was ever a game called Balloon Man for the Sega. The cartridge art is just paper with rainbow colors, probably stuck to the game by glue. The title at the top of the cartridge was Balloon Man, with a funny font. I got all the stuff out of the box and went to my old TV up in my attic. I turned on the lights, went to the TV, plugged in the Sega, and played the game. I was very curious about that game. I wanted to know what it was. So, out of my video game knowledge, I plugged the black cords into the old TV of mine. I was still upset that it was a bootleg and not some popular game like, Sonic the Hedgehog. But, what you see is what you get. Exactly. I pushed the game into the Sega slot and I turned it on, and this is what happened. Balloon Man, the title screen, was much like the awfully drawn cartridge art. Rainbows. The rainbows were flashing in an almost seizure-giving way. It was so bright I could barely see play. That was in the same cheesy font as the title. There was no sound either, just the sound of the old TV buzzing. I pressed a random button on the fat controller. The screen just flashed rainbows again. "I'm fed up with this!" I screamed. Why did I scream? I didn't even feel angry, but I did. I did want to play. I reached for the power button when the screen flashed to a man hanging onto a bunch of balloons in a space-looking area with stars. The man was weird-looking. He had a big head, a huge head, sorry. He had a 1950s-looking Candyman outfit with the red stripes and the bow tie. The main objective was game to pop all the balloons the strange man was hanging onto. Nothing really scary about that. Well, he kept screaming in a chiptune-type voice, "Don't let me go, please!" And he also cried. I felt uneasy about this and strangely felt sad for him, so I didn't want to play. I turned it off. After all this, I went to bed, but I didn't sleep. I just lied there. I kept thinking about it, couldn't get it out of my mind. I wanted to see what other things were in that game, but I was too afraid to play it. I went to my attic again and turned the Sega on, told myself to play it, pressed start. I went back to the same level, but this time it had a low-pitched circus type of music. I popped all the balloons. The game has scarred me. This part is a part I don't want to talk about, but I have to get it off my chest. I popped all the balloons and he fell, but while he was falling, he screamed in a violent manner. I can clearly remember the awful, ear-wrenching sound of his scream. It sounded like a real person. It was in a chiptune sound, but it wasn't programmed. You can hear the grainy and echo scream of him. The screen faded to black and text appeared. In the text it said, "Burlington Lane Torture Project." I live in Burlington Lane. Now, this isn't exactly the best creepypasta ever, but then again, it is kind of unique. For one, it doesn't fall into the usual cliche of getting a game or console off of the usual places that we find in many creepypastas, but instead finds it in a van in the bad part of town. which makes me wonder what the original owner was like, or did he or she even intend for the player to take the game and run off only to get scared shitless? Kind of a sick joke, I guess? I don't know. From what I could find, though, Balloon Man wasn't an actual game for the Genesis, and the closest I could even find was a game on the Game Boy Color, and even that I'm not even completely sure, leading me to believe this game never existed, or could probably just have been a, homebrew game or something like that. As far as creepiness goes, there isn't a whole lot, as this happens too fast, and it really has no time to build up. And I would hope that the game itself would have been just a little more creepier, with numerous bizarre things happening in it. Or at least have more subtlety. The idea of some person hanging onto a balloon and falling while making an 8-bit scream isn't all that creepy to me. And there are far more creepier things we've covered, even far more creepier games that have actually, come out, such as Sweet Home for the NES. Even though that was a horror game, I'll give it that, but still, that gives you the idea that even an 8-bit game can be scary and creepy in its own right if done properly. Overall, I like that it was unique in a way, but was disappointed with the way the story was handled. I believe if it was more spaced out, this could have been more creepier, and the atmosphere would have been much more developed, making this a much better creepypasta. In the end, what would you rate it, and how would you change this creepypasta to make it better? All in all, I do recommend you should check this creepypasta out. Links are in the description below. This is me, Mutahar, from Some Ordinary Gamers, and I'm out.